Jerome O'Reilly is our treasurer for the Homeland Party. He's one of our youngest senior officers, and I'm delighted today to sit down with him so we can all get to know him a little bit better. So the first question I like to ask our members is, how did you get into nationalism?
Well, I suppose I've always been inclined to perhaps a more right-wing area of the political spectrum. My first political thoughts were really when I was very young, around the 2010 general election. And I remember my parents instructing me that the Labour Party was the right way to vote, because the Labour Party would invest more in national infrastructure. Though I could sort of sense that the people were tired of New Labour after 13 years of invasions of Iraq, a shattered economy, banking crises, multiculturalism, mass migration. People were quite fed up with it, really. So generally, as things go, I would think about things politically. You receive your education. And, then really the big thing for me was the 2016 referendum, in which I initially supported the Britain to remain in the European Union, because David Cameron was a leader of the Conservative Party at the time. I quite respected his voice. I thought he was, quite a clean politician at the time. And then I looked into the issues, really. And I looked into the issues that would be affecting people, British people, their culture, their way of life in England, in Wales and Scotland. And, then came to the conclusion that actually leaving the European Union was the only way to essentially save our national character and our national economy and our independence. One of the big issues I remember was the closure of Redcar Steelworks in the run-up to the referendum. The British government, the Conservative government, tried to nationalise and bail out that steel works. But because of European Union free market competition laws, the UK government were blocked from doing so. One of the major reasons, I think, that many in that area of the world did vote to leave, because they were betrayed by the European Union. The European Union doesn't protect the European workers or European peoples. I eventually switched to vote leave, and then of course later that year Donald Trump was elected president, and to see the same reaction of liberals in America to the reaction of liberals in this country to Brexit was just to call people stupid, saying people they didn't know what they were on about, belittling people, saying that they were going to deny the democratic will of the people. And I was really just shocked that people who call themselves liberal and democratic and progressive,
tolerant, open-minded, and so on and so forth,
would ever think of a way where it's like, well, we've got to completely shut down what the people actually think. But here we are in 2023 with, mass censorship both on the internet from private companies and the government, hand in hand. And again, you see these liberals are just a joke. So I could never be on the liberal side of politics because they have no principles. At least the principles they did have, they've abandoned for the religion of tolerance. And then, generally into sort of frontline nationalism then, I did feel like I have, certain skills. I quite like public speaking. I have, an analytical mind. I did economics in university. And I think that I could help in a way to get people's thinking in the nationalist movement a bit more refined.
So would you say it was sovereignty or economics or culture that really motivated your thinking on whether to stay in the European Union, or maybe even immigration?
Yeah, immigration played a part at the time. Definitely with Nigel Farage's influence on politics at the time, incredible. A politician, I don't think he's right on everything. But he did beat the political odds, and he beat the system through decades of hard work. And you have to respect a man for that. Around South Wales, areas have changed significantly due to immigration, particularly down in Cardiff, where I grew up. Places are unrecognisable. And even then you move to, the areas that people have lived for centuries in Cardiff. Built the city, built the docks.
There's an injustice there, isn't there?
There is.
The demographic change, and undermining these people's way of life and their livelihoods because of suppressed wages and what have you.
Of course. And of course, the other thing then in South Wales then is that the abandonment of industry. So you have a really sort of a two-pronged attack upon people of South Wales. They get their economic livelihood ripped out from underneath them under the Thatcher government, and then the new Labour Blairite government come in and destroy their culture and destroy their way of life. So they've really had a tough time of it over these past 40 years.
Undoubtedly.
And part of my mission in the Homeland Party is to bring back some dignity for these people, win them back their pride, and win them back their communities.
So what are your responsibilities as the party treasurer?
So for all political parties, the treasurer is responsible for returning annual accounts to the Electoral Commission at the end of every year and submitting donations, both in party memberships and individual donations, to the Electoral Commission in terms of a record. So any donations above £500 will have to be logged individually, and any donations above £7,500 over the course of a financial year will have to be given to the Electoral Commission as well. But that's sort of the main bread and butter. Is the really important part of the treasurer is to ensure financial responsibility within the party, to make sure funds don't go missing, and to make sure to ensure for all party members that their money is being spent in a reasonable way to further the party's aims and our political goals. And that's the main thing, really, for a long time in the nationalist movement. Many different parties, many different groups. Financial responsibility and transparency hasn't been the most, important thing. And I think that has made a culture of a lack of trust. So the accusation that if you ask for donations, if you ask for money, you're a grifter. Because in many cases, a lot of that time, it is true that people do use the movement for their own personal gain. But which is why I think a political party structure is so important. Because at the end, as I said, you have to declare what you've got to the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission will publish what you spent your money on. And you can't hide. And of course you can, pay the chairman or the treasurer loads and loads of money, but then people can see that.
Yeah.
So, if we're spending money irresponsibly, our members will know. And they have the right then to ask questions.
Yeah, that's what we really want to do differently, is be honest, be transparent, no smoke and mirrors. Exactly. This is what we're doing, this is where the money's going. And, hopefully we do a good job.
Yes, yeah. My other duties within the party are really perhaps more academically inclined, writing bits of policy, some scripts for certain shows, and a few articles really, and that's a bit of bread and butter, well with a bit of activism. But
well, we're only small for now, so it's inevitable that everybody's going to chip in with different areas, aren't they?
I would hope so, yes. Yeah. And we're going to have some great minds in the party. We already do, and I think the way we're going about it, we're going to attract even more bright young people as well.
So how do you feel about landing the role of a treasurer of a political party at such a young age?
Well, it is quite a responsibility, really, because, I've just finished university. I was quite surprised when our chairman, Kenny Smith, asked me to do the role, but I took it up gladly. It is that responsibility, I think. The nationalist movement in Britain is and in England and Wales, Scotland, is very old. It's at least, I'd say about 50, 60 years old. Really going back to Enoch Powell, I suppose. And you've got so many people with so much experience that I think as a young voice, I'm quite surprised that there are so many young voices in the movement at the moment, and they get so much respect from that older generation. I think that's very good, and of course that older generation have so much information and experience, which is very helpful. But yes, we're all equals in the National Council of the Homeland Party. We all get on very well, we work very well. People of all ages, all backgrounds, but it's a good culture, it really is, and it's a credit. I'm really, overjoyed really that I'm part of such a promising and party in its early stages. We'll see where it goes.
So do you feel that there's any barriers to young lads getting involved, and what advice would you give to them?
Well, I would say if there are barriers, usually the barrier is the individual themselves. Perhaps they are engaging in online discourse, which is unsanitary and potentially wrong, morally wrong, and perhaps criminally wrong as well. And if you are one of those people, you need to stop there. But I don't think that's the majority of people at all. I think that young lads have to realise that there is a world outside of a sort of little clubs, internet niche groups, video games, and realise there is a community out there that is looking for leadership. And you don't have to be an old man or an old woman to be a leader in your community. You can be any age you want to be. If you are kind, articulate, respectable, you will get, recognition. We have councillors in the Homeland Party who are just as young as me, and we have councillors who are in their 60s. Community councillors, parish councillors in Scotland and England, and I hope soon Wales. And they do wonderful work for their communities. So this is really, if you're sitting watching this at home, on the internet, or you are, mired in these groups that tell you there's no political solution. There is, the only way is to run away to an online silo or join some silly group in the woods. I can tell you that's the opposite of the truth. If you you can put your nationalist vision across in a way that can appeal to your community, and you can be a leader even at a young age.
So you were born and raised in Wales. What are your thoughts on English-Welsh relations at present?
Historically, the histories of England and Wales have been more similar than perhaps both English people and Welsh people realise. In 1066, the Duke of Normandy, William, who would later be known as William the Conqueror, conquered England, and then he soon moved his armies into Wales. So both the English and the Welsh were subjugated by Norman lords on horseback in chainmail. And people fail to realise that. Wales has a lovely history of castles, but those castles were built by Norman barons who came in to Wales to build, to build their wealth essentially, and to push the Welsh people into serfdom. But they did that to England too. So we have to remember actually we've got far more in common than what divides us, I think. Now, of course, England and Wales are very distinct countries. Welsh, of course, is of a Brythonic nature. England, of course, is Anglo-Saxon. And, those two groups have had problems in the past, back in the Dark Ages. But I think for the past 400, 500 years, especially since the establishment of the Tudor dynasty on the thrones of England and Wales, Welsh people were given the same legal rights as English people under the rule of Henry VIII. Now, Henry VIII, of course, brutal tyrant, but he did that one favour for us anyway. But yes, the main antagonism in the modern day really comes from industrialisation and its fallout, really. There has been the idea, at least, that England has stolen Welsh coal, Welsh resources. And in the 20th century, of course, the flooding of the Trewelyn Valley, which was a small but sort of pure Welsh community in North Wales. So, of course, 100% Welsh speakers have been speaking Welsh since goodness knows when, since the before recorded history. And that valley was flooded in the 1950s to create a reservoir in order to water the city of Liverpool. That caused a lot of controversy because, of course, a Welsh village getting sunk to help out the English. A bit of antagonism then, of course, with the developments of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. That set the backdrop of another Celtic peoples perhaps being trod on by unthinking, uncaring, arrogant English people. Now, of course, I don't think that's fair. Other villages around England are also flooded. This is a national policy. It is unfortunate that that the people didn't get more of a democratic say. Perhaps the people of North Wales should have had a say in that decision, but what's done is done, the reservoir is built. But again, water policy in the future, people talk about global warming. Water is going to be, and clean water with the state of infrastructure as well in this country is going to be an important resource. And that's one thing the people of Wales should remember as well. So again, there's this cooperation between England and Wales that I think is now realising and has improved, I think, since the devolution of Wales, of first the Welsh Assembly and then the Welsh Parliament. Now that was only passed by a very slim margin, about 0.2% or 0.3% of the vote in the early Blairite years. It was quite controversial in Wales, but now 20 years on from devolution, I think the ground has settled a bit. And I think it has improved the relations between the English and the Welsh people because, again, English people come to Wales, Welsh people can go to England, we speak the same language. But Wales has the ability to preserve its own national character and the Welsh language of its own, which has been growing in recent years as well. But it also, we respect just the cultural ties, our shared history between the English and also the economic relationship that so binds us for so many centuries as well, which has benefited all of our nations. I mean, the coal industry, the steel industry, slate industry, brought pride both to Wales and to Britain. And that's something that, both English and Welsh people can be proud of, that shared industrial history. But again, I think the biggest problem now, you can see the people of Wales are getting a bit fed up of Mark Drakeford, and getting a bit fed up of the far left of the Labour Party. And as many people are in England, and also dissatisfied with the Tories too. And I think generally I think both English people and Welsh people can work together in their shared experiences of the incompetences of the Westminster government and also the government down in Cardiff Bay as well. This most recent thing of the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit has got people up in arms. People have never been so fired up about this political issue in Wales before. And it's good to see, and they are right to be angry. And of course, this now is being taken on England now, with English people getting outraged about, restrictions on motorists and making it more expensive to drive a car, making it unaffordable to drive a car. I think we've got far more that unites us than divides us.
Well, you're certainly correct that the English and the Welsh both share political enemies, that is, the mainstream parties in Westminster, absolutely. Well, Jerome, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alec. It was lovely to talk to you.
You too.